There is nothing convenient about being a Christian, about being a Christ follower. And one of the things I find fascinating is that not just the church of today, but America as a whole today, we worship convenience. A matter of fact, a lot of the times in America today, we will not engage what is the common good. We won't do things for the common good if it is inconvenient for us. And typically how we rationalize that is we say, that is against my rights. And we don't understand there's a difference between rights and convenience. It is inconvenient to pay taxes. But thankfully, that inconvenience pays for things like road repairs. It is inconvenient to be a citizen of really any country that has laws. And yet it is inconvenience that ultimately allows communities to thrive. And the less and less we have tolerance of inconvenience, the less and less our society thrives. And I would even argue the less and less that we are understanding what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. There is something about inconvenience and being a Christ follower that go hand in hand. One of my really good friends, Kaylee Morgan, she was exegeting a passage. She was talking about the widow's mite. And her insight on it was so startling to me that not only did I want to share it with you, but frankly, it's been something I just can't get out of my mind. Because what she talked about was that the key issue in the widow's mite story is inconvenience. In Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44, it'll help if we walk through the text a little bit to kind of see where this theme emerges. It says in verse 41, Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd. Jesus is a people watcher. And there's something about looking into a crowd from across the room whenever the persons don't know that you're watching, where you see some parts of their true humanity come out. It might be a quick look. It might be a nervous kick of the legs. It might be when their eyes light up and when their eyes go glazed. But there's something about watching people function in a crowd when the truth of their heart starts to emerge. And so Jesus sits down opposite of the place where the offerings are being had, where they're being put, and he watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. It was something that for many Jews would have been so commonplace, giving your tithes, giving your offering, that it's easy to do common tasks without thinking of the weight of them. You just merely go through the motions. It says many rich people threw in large amounts. Large amounts for a rich person sometimes are not as large for the rich person as what you think. Like there was a person in one of my ministries, he was a millionaire, and man, whenever he would throw $10,000 for us to, literally, this is true, to buy a bell to put on the outside of the church building, people were like, whoa, I can't believe he did that. But $10,000 for him is like $100 for me. You feel it, but it's not like it throws off your whole, budget for the week. I'm not saying that that's not, I just wanted to make sure I put a caveat. I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for what he did. I'm just saying the ratios are different. So you have the rich people throwing in large amounts, but then comes verse 42. It says, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. I definitely think it's important for us to look at the value. They're only worth a few cents. But don't get caught up in the value. Get caught up in the word two. We'll come back to that in a minute. Verse 43, calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. Notice there is a different metric by which Jesus is weighing the gifts. They gave out of their wealth. But she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on. My friend Kaylee at this point asked this question: would anyone have been upset if she only put one of her 2 coins in? Would anyone have said, how dare you? First of all, both of them together were only worth a couple of cents. Second of all, it would not have been outlandish for her with 2 coins to keep half and to give the other half away. Think about that. Half. 50%, not 10%, 50%. She justifiably could have kept 50% of her couple of cents in order to try to live on. Because I'm sure for this widow who did not have somebody to provide for her as it was in the ancient world, coming across any level of money was a bit difficult. But with 2 coins in her hands, it didn't cross her mind to keep one and to give the other. Instead, out of her willingness to be inconvenienced, she gave both coins. You see, what the rich were giving and what the widow were giving were not measured by the amount of money that they gave or even by the percentage. It was measured by the level of convenience. Because the rich were able to give at a higher monetary value, but it was not a value that inconvenienced them. And frankly, a lot of us in our Christian life, we protect ourselves from being inconvenienced. I mean, we complain about going to church or waking up early or trying to find 15 minutes to pray but I'm talking about a different level of inconvenience. I'm talking about a gospel that inconveniences you on every single level so that your politics are affected by the inconvenience of the gospel. So that the way in which you treat your enemies is inconvenienced by the gospel. So that the rights that you even claim are your own are inconvenienced by the gospel. The problem is that most of us in the church are struggling with the call of Christ on this one key issue. He is calling us to be inconvenienced by the way that we spread the gospel, by the way that we treat ourselves, by the way that we treat each other, by the way in which we even give our money. As Christians, here is what I think the call of the cross on which Christ was crucified on. It's this: become more comfortable with being inconvenient. Become more comfortable with being inconvenienced. Because ultimately, that is what we are laying down at the altar of Christ whenever we take up our cross. When we choose Jesus, we choose a life of inconvenience. And through that, we become more and more like the one that was crucified, who did not consider equality with God a convenience to be grasped, but allowed our sin and his rescue mission to inconvenience him even to the point of death. That's my prayer for you this week. Learn how to get comfortable with being inconvenient. I love you guys. Have a good week.